A millionaire found a mother crying in the rain with her 2 newborn babies. When he brought them home, his assistant suddenly revealed a secret about the mother. Rain lashed against the windshield in relentless waves, transforming the streets of Seattle into glistening rivers. Adam Shelton's knuckles tightened on the leather steering wheel of his sleek black BMW as his headlights cut through the murk. The rhythmic thud of the wipers did little to alleviate the tension coiling in his chest. The city was alive with its usual chaos, cars honking, blurred lights flickering against puddles, and pedestrians rushing under umbrellas. Adam felt detached from it all, as though he existed in a bubble of silence amid the storm. His day had been long, his business meeting predictable, his victories hollow. He didn't hate his life, not exactly. He just couldn't shake the sensation that something vital was missing. The rain intensified as he approached the intersection, forcing him to slow down. That's when he saw her, a figure hunched against the downpour, barely discernible through the sheets of water. Adam frowned, his foot hovering over the brake. As his car crawled closer, the shape clarified into a woman clutching 2 bundles to her chest. The coat clung to her body, causing her shoulders to tremble with exhaustion. A gust of wind blew back the hood shielding her face, revealing hollow cheeks and wide, frightened eyes. He didn't think, not really. His hand was already on the door handle before his rational brain could protest. Rain slapped against his suit as he stepped out. "Ma'am!" His voice carried over the hiss of the storm, calm but firm. "Are you all right?" She flinched, backing a step away, clutching the bundles. Babies, he realized with a jolt, closer to her chest. The babies didn't cry, but their tiny, swaddled forms trembled against her. "I'm fine," she said, though her voice cracked on the words. "Leave us alone." Adam's gaze flicked from her drenched figure to the street behind her. The shadows loomed too heavily, the sidewalks too empty. "You're standing in the middle of nowhere, soaking wet, with 2 infants. That doesn't seem acceptable to me." Her chin lifted slightly, defiance warring with desperation in her eyes. "I'll manage." Adam didn't miss the wobble in her stance, or the way her hands shook. "Look," he said, keeping his tone even, "I don't mean you any harm. I just want to help. My car's right there. It's warm and dry, safer than out here." For a moment, she hesitated, her teeth sinking into her lower lip. She glanced down at the babies, the fight draining from her shoulders. I can't trust." "I get it," Adam interrupted, sensing her reluctance. "But this rain isn't stopping, and your kids are freezing. Let me help. That's all." She stared at him, her dark eyes sharp but wary. Another long moment passed before she took a halting step forward. Just for tonight," she said softly. "For them." Adam nodded, stepping aside to open the car door. "That's all." She climbed in carefully, shielding the twins as best she could from the rain. Adam followed, pulling the door shut and blasting the heater. The soft hum of the engine filled the silence as he glanced over at her. She sat stiffly, her soaked coat dripping onto the leather seat, her arms wrapped protectively around the babies. "What's your name?" he asked, keeping his voice gentle. "Amanda," she murmured, eyes fixed on the twins. "And this is Lucas and Logan." "Adam," he offered, gripping the wheel. "You're safe now, Amanda. Let's get you somewhere dry." The mansion stood tall against the storm, a towering structure composed of glass and stone. Lights flickered on as Adam led Amanda inside, her steps hesitant on the pristine marble floor. The warmth of the house enveloped them, contrasting sharply with the cold outside. Amanda's presence felt jarringly out of place amidst the sleek furniture and silent grandeur. She stood awkwardly in the foyer, dripping onto the polished floor, her wide eyes darting around. "Let me take your coat," Adam said, reaching out. She recoiled slightly, clutching the babies tighter. "No," she said quickly. I'll keep them with me." "Suit yourself," Adam replied, raising his hands in surrender. "Caleb will bring some towels. Just stay here." At the mention of Caleb, Adam's assistant, the man himself appeared, his sharp features and steady gaze taking in Amanda with quiet interest. His brows knitted for the briefest moment as if something about her tugged at a long-buried memory. Amanda noticed his scrutiny and instinctively tightened her grip on the twins. Caleb's expression softened, and he nodded curtly before disappearing to fetch what she needed. Adam observed her from the edge of his vision while he made adjustments to the thermostat. She was trembling, but not just from the cold. Despite the fear flickering in her gaze, she held herself together for her children, a contradiction of strength and fragility. "Let's get you settled," he said, his tone quieter now. Amanda didn't respond, but she followed him into the house. Behind her, Caleb lingered in the shadows, his curiosity growing. The rain had stopped by the time they stepped inside, but the chill lingered, clinging to Amanda's soaked coat as she cradled Lucas and Logan. Adam's mansion's quiet hum enveloped them, its walls towering and impersonal. Amanda shifted uncomfortably on the edge of the couch, her hands gripping the twins tightly, their warmth the only anchor against her growing unease. From across the room, Caleb leaned casually against the doorframe, his arms crossed. His sharp eyes watched her, not with suspicion, but with a peculiar kind of intensity, as if searching for something buried in her face. He didn't speak. He hadn't since they'd entered. But the air around him seemed heavy with unspoken questions. Adam returned from the kitchen, carrying a tray with steaming mugs of tea. "Here," he said simply, setting it on the coffee table. His gaze lingered on Amanda, who hesitated before finally accepting the gesture. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the cup, more from exhaustion than fear. "They must be hungry," Adam said, nodding towards the babies. "Caleb, can you—" "I'll handle it," Caleb interrupted, pushing off the doorframe. He moved with quiet efficiency, disappearing down the hall before Amanda could protest. She glanced at Adam, unsure whether to feel relieved or wary of the man's abrupt demeanor. "Don't mind him," Adam said, sinking into the armchair opposite her. "He's thorough, but he means well." Amanda gave a faint nod, her fingers curling tighter around the mug. "This is a lot. I mean, for you to do. For someone you don't know." Adam studied her, his expression unreadable. "I don't make a habit of bringing strangers into my home, if that's what you're wondering. But you were out there, in the rain, with those kids." He let the words hang, his tone matter-of-fact. "Let's just say, I've seen enough of life to know when someone needs help." Her lips parted as if to respond, but the weight of his words, or maybe the weight of her own situation, stilled her. Instead, she glanced down at Lucas and Logan, who had fallen asleep, their tiny faces soft and peaceful against her chest. The housekeeper's cooking and Adam's steady, if slightly awkward attempts at conversation subdued Amanda's initial hesitance during dinner. The twins, now fed and swaddled in fresh blankets, slept soundly in a makeshift crib nearby. "So," Adam began, his voice deliberately casual, "you're from Seattle?" Amanda stiffened slightly but nodded. "Born and raised. And, their father?" He gestured subtly toward the twins. She hesitated, the fork pausing mid-air. "He's not in the picture anymore?" Adam waited, giving her space. Slowly, haltingly, the story spilled out. The whirlwind romance with Martin, the unexpected pregnancy, his cold indifference when she told him, and his eventual disappearance when things got real. She didn't linger on the pain, but her clipped tone said enough. And then the hospital, she said, her voice quieter now. When they took the boys away after the delivery, I thought it was routine. But then a nurse came in, saying I should consider adoption, that I couldn't give them what they needed. She trailed off, her hands tightening into fists. Something wasn't right. They kept pressing, and when I refused, I heard them talking, about taking them anyway. Her voice broke, and she stared down at her plate as if embarrassed by the admission. Adam leaned back, his face grim. You did what you had to do. Despite the tension in her jaw, she nodded. I ran. I didn't think, I just grabbed them and ran. From his place at the kitchen doorway, Caleb listened silently, his arms folded across his chest, her voice, sharp with defiance, but trembling at the edges, pulled at something deep within him. Her name, her face, and the way her words spilled out, as if she was accustomed to fighting for every inch of ground, all felt familiar, painfully so. When Amanda stood to clear the table, Caleb stepped forward almost instinctively. You're limping, he said bluntly, his eyes narrowing on her uneven steps. She blinked, taken aback by his directness. It's nothing. I twisted my ankle when I was running. It'll heal. Let me see. It wasn't a question. Amanda hesitated, but the firm edge in Caleb's tone left little room for argument. Reluctantly, she sat down, shifting the twins carefully onto the couch before rolling up the cuff of her jeans. Caleb crouched beside her, his hands steady as he examined her swollen ankle. His brow furrowed, but his attention snagged on something else. You've got a scar here, he said, his voice low. A birthmark? Her face flushed slightly. Not a birthmark, it's an old scar. I fell off my bike when I was a kid. His breath caught. Slowly he leaned back, his gaze lifting to meet hers. Shaped like a leaf? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Amanda stared at him, startled. How? Caleb's throat tightened. Memories surged, childhood laughter, scraped knees, and the tiny hand clutching his as he patched her up. It's you, he said. The words weighted with disbelief and something close to wonder. Amanda. The room seemed to close in, the walls pressing against the enormity of the realization. Caleb's voice softened, trembling at the edges. I'm Caleb. I'm your brother. The air thickened in the room, charged with unspoken emotions and disbelief. Amanda blinked at him, her mouth slightly open, searching for words that refused to come. What? She finally managed, her voice barely audible. Caleb rose slowly, the weight of realization settling heavily on his shoulders. You're Amanda, he said again, quieter this time, as if testing the truth himself. You're my sister. She shook her head, her brow furrowing. No. That's impossible. Her voice was firm, but there was a flicker of something, hesitation, recognition, lurking beneath her defiance. Amanda, Caleb pressed, his voice cracking just slightly. He gestured toward her leg. That scar. I remember it. You were 6, and you wouldn't give up on riding that old rusty bike no matter how many times you fell. You were so stubborn. His lips quirked into a brief, bittersweet smile. The last time, you tumbled into the bushes, and I carried you back to the house while you sobbed the whole way. I told you it looked like a little leaf, and you believed me. Her eyes widened, and she instinctively shifted her hand to cover the scar, as if shielding it would make his words untrue. How could you? Because I was there, Caleb interrupted, stepping back as the memories surged. His voice grew heavier, laced with guilt. I was there until I wasn't. Until I had to leave. He ran a hand through his hair, his jaw tightening. I returned to find everything gone. I lost the house, our parents, and you. All I found was silence. Amanda shook her head again, more forcefully this time, but her breath came quicker. No, That doesn't make sense. My brother, Caleb, he left. He abandoned us." Her voice cracked, trembling under the weight of the accusation. "I didn't want to leave," Caleb said softly, lowering himself to her level. He searched her face, desperate for her to see the truth in his eyes. "I had no choice. My work as a secret agent was not safe. They told me I had to cut ties, erase everything that could lead back to my family. I naively believed that I would have ample time, that I could come back." His voice faltered, and he looked away. "But when I finally could, I was too late." Amanda's breathing hitched, her fingers tightening around the edge of the couch. They died," she whispered, her words sounding almost like a question. "Mum and Dad. The accident." Caleb nodded, his throat bobbing as he swallowed hard. "I couldn't find you. I searched everywhere, Amanda. I looked through foster systems and orphanage records. However, you were no longer present." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the soft, rhythmic breaths of the twins sleeping nearby. Amanda's gaze dropped to her lap, her fingers brushing against the faint outline of the scar on her leg. "I didn't think anyone was looking for me," she said finally, her voice hollow. "I thought I was alone." Her words hit Caleb like a physical blow. He sank onto the couch beside her, his elbows resting on his knees as he buried his face in his hands. "I should have tried harder," he murmured. "I should have found a way." Amanda watched him, her defenses slowly crumbling under the weight of his raw regret. "You really are him," she whispered, almost to herself. Her tone softened, colored by a mixture of wonder and disbelief. "You're Caleb." He nodded, his shoulders sagging. "I'm here now, and I'm not leaving again. I promise you that." Her expression wavered, a fragile mix of anger, pain, and longing flashing across her face. Tears welled in her eyes, and when she finally spoke, her voice broke. "Why didn't you come sooner?" The question hung between them, piercing and jagged. Caleb turned toward her, his expression anguished. "I couldn't," he said, his voice hoarse. "I didn't know how. Every door felt closed, and I was a coward. I told myself it was too late, that I'd already failed you." Amanda's tears spilled over, her breath shuddering. "You don't get to say that. You don't get to come back now, after everything." "I know." Caleb's voice, barely audible, carried the burden of years of guilt. "I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you let me." Her tears fell freely now, her shoulders trembling. For a moment, she simply stared at him, her chest rising and falling with the effort to breathe through the emotions overwhelming her. Then, without warning, she reached out, her hand clutching his arm tightly. "Don't make promises you can't keep," she said, her voice trembling. But her grip remained firm, as if she was afraid he'd vanish if she let go. "I won't," Caleb said, his voice steady despite the storm in his chest. He placed his hand over hers, anchoring them both in the fragile truce of the moment. The room seemed to exhale with them, the unspoken years between them beginning, tentatively, to bridge. Outside, the rain began to fall again, soft and steady, as if the city itself wept. The next morning dawned in muted shades of grey, the remnants of the storm clinging to the Seattle skyline. Amanda stood at the large bay window in Adam's sprawling living room, gazing out at the rain-slicked streets below. The twins lay in a bassinet nearby, swaddled and peaceful, their tiny breaths a steady rhythm in the otherwise silent room. She had barely slept. She felt the weight of the previous night's revelations. The long-lost brother she had assumed was forever gone, settling heavy in her chest. She turned, as the soft murmur of voices floated from the kitchen, where Caleb and Adam were in quiet discussion. Adam stood at the counter, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. A softer, less guarded demeanor tinged his usually composed demeanor. "You okay?" he asked Caleb, handing him a mug. Caleb nodded, his gaze drifting to the living room where Amanda stood. "She's stronger than I thought," he said quietly, "but I've got a lot of work to do if I'm going to fix this." Adam sipped his coffee, his expression thoughtful. "You've got time. She's here now. That's what matters." Tiny cries echoed from the living room, interrupting their conversation. Caleb moved instinctively, but Adam held up a hand. "I've got it," he said, setting his mug down and heading toward the bassinet. Amanda turned as Adam approached, watching as he scooped Lucas into his arms with surprising ease. The baby quieted, almost immediately, nuzzling against Adam's chest. "You're excellent at that," Amanda said, her voice laced with surprise. Adam gave a small shrug, his lips quirking into a faint smile. "I've been around enough boardrooms to know how to handle temper tantrums. This isn't so different." Despite herself, Amanda chuckled. It was a small sound, tentative, but it lit something in Adam. He glanced at her, noticing the way the corners of her lips softened when she smiled, even briefly. "You should sit," Adam said, his tone almost stern. "You're still recovering." "I'm fine," Amanda replied, though the dark circles under her eyes betrayed her words. Adam didn't press further, but gestured toward the couch. "Humor me." Amanda hesitated before sitting, her gaze following Adam as he gently rocked Lucas. She hadn't expected this side of him. The man who had seemed all sharp edges and business-like efficiency the night before now cradled her child with a quiet tenderness. Later that afternoon, Caleb busied himself around the house, channeling his emotions into action. He organized the delivery of groceries, set up a proper crib in one of the guest rooms, and mentally compiled a list of everything Amanda and the twins might require. "Trying to impress me?" Amanda's voice startled him as she appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, but a faint smirk playing on her lips. Caleb straightened, his hands still gripping a screwdriver. "Just trying to be useful," he said, his tone light, but his eyes serious. Amanda stepped into the room, her gaze falling on the crib. "It's nice," she admitted. "You didn't have to go to all this trouble." "Yes, I did," Caleb said simply. He set the screwdriver down and turned to face her. "You're my family, Amanda. It's my job now to take care of you." For a moment she didn't reply, her expression wavering between gratitude and something more guarded. "You don't have to do it alone," she said finally. "I know," Caleb replied, his voice steady. "But I want to." That evening, Adam made a call to Nicole, explaining Amanda's precarious situation. "I need someone sharp," he said, pacing his study. "I need someone who can navigate the bureaucratic obstacles and ensure her safety." "I'll be there in an hour," Nicole replied, her voice crisp and assured. When she arrived, her presence was immediate, polished yet commanding, with an energy that filled the room. Caleb, who had been sorting through papers with Adam, glanced up and stiffened slightly at her entrance. "This is Nicole," Adam said, gesturing toward her. "She's my lawyer and an old friend. Nicole, this is Caleb, Amanda's brother." Nicole's gaze flicked to Caleb, appraising him with sharp eyes. "Brother, huh?" she said, her tone light but edged with curiosity. "Nice to meet you." Caleb nodded, his posture straightening slightly. "Likewise." The exchange was brief, but the air between them bristled with something unspoken. Nicole's confident demeanor seemed to clash with Caleb's reserved nature, and yet neither looked away. "Let's get to work," Nicole said briskly, breaking the silence. Later that night, as the house quieted and the twins slept, Amanda found Adam sitting in the living room, a glass of whiskey in his hand. She hesitated in the doorway before stepping inside. "Thank you," she said softly. Adam looked up, his expression unreadable. "For what?" "For everything," she said, gesturing vaguely to the house, the help, the food. "For giving us a place to land when we had nowhere else." Adam leaned back, his gaze thoughtful. "Don't thank me yet," he said, his tone almost teasing. "You might regret it when you see how boring this place can get." Amanda smiled faintly, shaking her head. "I don't think so. If there are powerful individuals involved, concealing the truth becomes effortless." Adam stepped closer, his expression grim. "What do we need to expose this?" "A lot," Nicole admitted, leaning back in her chair, "but I can start by drafting requests for detailed records. However, this may cause some controversy, so we must prepare for potential resistance." Caleb nodded. "We anticipate pushback. That's why we need a plan to get ahead of them." He tapped a pen against the table, his mind clearly racing. "I can use my contacts to dig deeper, but we'll need someone on the inside." Nicole glanced at him, her brow arching. "Are you suggesting infiltration?" Caleb met her gaze steadily. "I am." Nicole's lips pressed into a thin line. "That's dangerous. If they're as connected as I think, they'll sniff you out fast." "I can handle it," Caleb replied firmly. Adam raised a hand, his voice calm but authoritative. "Let's focus on gathering evidence first. If infiltration becomes necessary, we'll plan it properly." Nicole inclined her head in agreement, but threw Caleb a pointed look. "Don't do anything reckless." Amanda stood in the doorway, listening to the conversation unfold. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but the weight of their words, adoptions, records, pushback, set her heart racing. She stepped into the room, drawing their attention. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice quiet but steady. Adam turned, his expression softening slightly. "We're looking into the hospital where you gave birth, trying to understand what's going on." Amanda hesitated, her arms crossing protectively over her chest. "And what do you think is going on?" Nicole cleared her throat, her tone gentle but matter-of-fact. Nicole expressed her suspicion that there is more going on at this hospital than what initially appears. They might be exploiting vulnerable mothers for illegal adoptions. Or worse. Amanda's face paled, and she sank into a chair. "So, it wasn't just me?" "No," Caleb said softly, sitting across from her. "You were one of many. But we're going to stop them." Amanda nodded, uncertainty clouding her eyes. "I don't know how much help I can be. I barely remember anything from that day. It was all such a blur." "That's okay," Nicole said. "We'll handle the details. You focus on taking care of yourself and the twins. Is this the first story you heard today? If so, comment Americano. If not, write Mocha. We are delighted to chat with the audience." Later that afternoon, Amanda sat in the living room with Adam. The twins lay on a blanket on the floor, their tiny hands reaching for the plush toys Amanda had arranged around them. Adam knelt beside them, his suit jacket discarded and his tie loosened. "They like you," Amanda said, watching as Lucas giggled at Adam's exaggerated expressions. Adam glanced at her, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "They're excellent judges of character." Amanda snorted softly, shaking her head. "You don't give yourself enough credit?" Adam leaned back, resting his arms on his knees. "I'm not exactly father material." "Why not?" Amanda asked, her tone genuinely curious. Adam hesitated, his gaze dropping to the twins. "I've always been better at fixing problems than connecting with people." Amanda studied him for a moment before speaking. "You've connected with them. You've also established a connection with me. That counts for something. Adam looked up at her, his expression unreadable. Maybe, he said quietly. As the day wore on, Caleb pored over documents in the study while Nicole worked on drafting formal requests. Their professional collaboration was efficient, but punctuated by subtle tensions. "You're not very good at sitting still, are you?" Nicole remarked, not looking up from her screen. Caleb smirked faintly. "I've never been good at patience." Nicole glanced at him, her eyes sharp but amused. "That's clear. But rushing into things won't help anyone?" "I don't rush," Caleb replied, his tone measured. "I act when necessary." Nicole leaned back in her chair, folding her arms. "We'll see." That evening, Caleb called a meeting. Amanda sat nervously beside Adam on the couch, while Nicole leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Caleb stood at the center of the room, holding a stack of papers. "We have a problem," he began, his voice steady but grave. "Amanda, there is someone watching you and the twins." The room fell silent. Amanda's breath caught, her hands instinctively reaching for the twins' bassinet. "What do you mean?" she whispered. Caleb set the papers on the table. "I found evidence of surveillance. Unmarked cars near the house, suspicious activity on the street. Whoever's behind this isn't just targeting the hospital. They know where you are." Adam's jaw tightened. "Then we need to move fast." Nicole straightened, her tone sharp. "We'll need security measures in place immediately, and I'll escalate the investigation." Amanda's voice shook as she spoke. "What do we do now?" Caleb met her gaze, his expression resolute. "We fight back." The tension in Adam's mansion was increasingly palpable. Nicole, elegantly attired in a tailored blazer, scrutinized a portfolio of falsified credentials that Caleb had compiled. Across the room, Caleb adjusted his tie in the reflection of a glass-paneled cabinet. His usual stoic expression carried a hint of unease. Adam entered the study, his presence as commanding as ever, though his rolled-up sleeves hinted at the informality the situation demanded. "The hospital administrator is expecting us at 2 p.m., he said. "I've arranged the tour as an investor interested in expansion opportunities. You'll have about an hour to look around before they start asking too many questions." Caleb nodded, his movements precise, as he pocketed a small recording device. "We'll get what we need." Nicole glanced up from the file, her eyes sharp. "And if things go sideways?" Caleb's lips curved into a faint smirk. "They won't." Nicole didn't look convinced, but didn't press further. Adam handed them both a sleek portfolio embossed with the logo of a fictitious healthcare investment firm. "Stay in character, and keep it professional," he said. "They're expecting investors, not investigators." At the hospital, the clinical white halls gleamed under fluorescent lights, their sterility masking the shadows beneath. A poised administrator in a navy suit met Caleb and Nicole, her practiced smile never quite reaching her eyes. "We're thrilled about your interest in our facility," she said, leading them down a corridor lined with posters promoting neonatal care. "Our neonatal unit is one of the most advanced in the state." Nicole nodded, her tone crisp and businesslike. "Impressive. We're particularly interested in your patient intake process, how you handle high-demand situations." The administrator's smile faltered slightly. "Of course, efficiency and compassion are our priorities." As the tour progressed, Caleb's sharp gaze missed nothing. The hurried whispers between staff, the locked doors labeled "authorized personnel only," and the way certain nurses avoided eye contact. Nicole kept the conversation flowing, her questions calculated to probe without arousing suspicion. At one point, Caleb excused himself under the guise of taking a phone call. He slipped into a nearby office marked "Records," the lock yielding easily under his deft hands. Inside, he found rows of filing cabinets and a terminal glowing faintly in the dim light. A quick search yielded digital records with anomalies, multiple birth certificates with identical dates, adoption paperwork, missing parental consent signatures, and vague medical discharge notes. He snapped photos of the most damning files before the sound of approaching footsteps sent him darting into the shadows. The door opened and a nurse entered, her expression wary. Caleb waited until she left before slipping back into the corridor, his pulse steady, but his mind racing. Back at the mansion, Amanda sat on the plush living room rug, watching as Logan babbled incoherently at a toy giraffe. The warmth of the room, combined with the rhythmic patter of rain against the windows, provided a fragile sense of normalcy. Adam entered, his tie loosened and his sleeves rolled up again. He paused at the sight of Amanda, a small smile tugging at his lips as he crouched beside Logan. The baby immediately reached for Adam's hand, gripping it tightly. "He likes you," Amanda said softly, her tone lighter than it had been in days. Adam glanced at her, his smile widening slightly. "That's because he doesn't know better yet." Amanda chuckled, shaking her head. "You're simpatico with them, you know? Better than you give yourself credit for." Adam leaned back, resting his arms on his knees. "They're simple to like," he said, his voice quieter now. "You're doing a fantastic job with them." Amanda looked at him, her expression softening. "I couldn't do it without your help. Without any of you." A flicker of something crossed Adam's face, something tender, almost vulnerable. Before he could respond, Amanda's expression shifted, shadowed by the weight of her worries. "Do you think we'll ever be safe?" Adam's gaze hardened, his resolve evident. "We'll make sure of it." That evening, Caleb and Nicole returned, their faces grim. The dining room became an impromptu war room, files and photos spread across the table. Caleb explained what he had found, his voice clipped and professional. "There's a pattern," he said, pointing to the photos on his phone. Birth certificates altered to match adoption records, parental consents forged. He gestured to a heavy steel door labeled "Restricted Access" in one of the photos, saying, "Whatever's behind them, they don't want anyone to see." Nicole added, "This isn't just negligence. It's a coordinated operation. Whoever's running this has resources and connections." Amanda, sitting at the far end of the table, looked pale but resolute. "So what happens now?" Caleb exchanged a look with Adam and Nicole before speaking. "We need more evidence, and we need to act fast. They're already suspicious. If they catch wind of what we're doing, they'll tighten their grip." Adam's voice was firm. "Then we don't give them the chance. We go after them before they come after us." As if in response, Adam's phone buzzed on the table. He picked it up, his expression darkening as he read the message. "They're moving," he said grimly. "The surveillance near the house has increased. They know we're onto them." Amanda's breath hitched, her grip tightening on the twins' bassinet. "What does that mean?" "It means," Caleb said, his voice steady despite the tension in the room, "we're running out of time." The room fell silent, the weight of the looming threat pressing down on them all. Outside, the rain began to fall harder, as if the city itself was bracing for what was to come. The day had started quietly, a brief reprieve from the tension that had become their constant companion. Amanda decided to venture out for groceries, a necessary task she insisted on handling herself, despite Caleb's protests. "I'll be fine," she said firmly, strapping Lucas into his car seat while Adam hovered nearby. "I can't hide forever. Besides, I need some fresh air." Adam exchanged a wary glance with Caleb, but relented. "Take 2 of the security team with you," he said, "just in case." Amanda sighed, but agreed. She wasn't naive enough to think the danger had passed, but the cabin fever in Adam's sprawling mansion was suffocating. Logan cooed softly in her arms as she settled him into his seat, his tiny fingers brushing against hers, in quiet reassurance. The grocery store was busier than Amanda expected, bustling with the mid-morning crowd. The twins, content in their stroller, drew smiles from strangers as Amanda navigated the aisles. For a moment, it felt almost normal, until she noticed the man. He was standing too close to the end of the aisle, pretending to inspect a row of canned goods while his gaze flicked toward her. Amanda's pulse quickened as she turned the stroller sharply, heading toward the produce section. Her heart sank when she saw another man near the entrance, his hand resting casually in his jacket pocket. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers trembling as she dialed Adam's number. "Something's wrong," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder. The first man had started moving toward her. "There are two of them. I think they're following me." "Stay where you are." Adam's voice was firm, controlled. "The security team is nearby. They'll get you out." Before she could respond, one of the men stepped in front of her, blocking her path. His smile was sharp, predatory. "Nice day for a stroll," he said, his tone dripping with mockery. Amanda's grip tightened on the stroller. "Leave me alone." The man didn't budge. "Come on now, we just want to talk." His eyes flicked to the twins, and Amanda felt a surge of protectiveness, so fierce it drowned out her fear. "Step back," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. The second man approached from behind, and Amanda's breath caught. Her mind raced, searching for an escape, when a commotion erupted near the store entrance. One of Adam's security guards barreled through the doors, his presence commanding immediate attention. "Ma'am, come with me," the guard barked, stepping between her and the men. The situation escalated in a blur of movement. The guards clashed with the men, their shouts blending with the startled cries of shoppers. Amanda seized the moment, gripping the stroller and darting toward the emergency exit. Back at the mansion, Adam was pacing the living room when the security team returned with Amanda and the twins. Her face was pale, her hands trembling as she clutched Logan tightly. She whispered, "They knew where I was. They were waiting for me." Adam's jaw tightened, his guilt evident. "I shouldn't have let you go," he said, his tone heavy. "I underestimated them." "It's not your fault," Amanda said, though her voice lacked conviction. Caleb stormily entered the room, his expression stormy. "They've crossed a boundary," he uttered, directing his gaze towards Amanda. "This is why I said you shouldn't leave." Amanda bristled, her exhaustion giving way to frustration. "I can't stay locked up forever, Caleb." "If it means keeping you safe, you can," Caleb shot back, his voice rising. Nicole stepped between them, her tone measured. "Arguing won't solve anything." She turned to Amanda, her expression softening. "Are you okay?" Amanda nodded, though tears shimmered in her eyes. Nicole placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll figure this out," she said. "You're not alone in this." Later that night, Nicole found Caleb on the back patio, staring out at the rain-soaked garden. She approached cautiously, her usual sharpness tempered by the day's events. "You're not excellent at staying calm, are you?" she said, her tone light but pointed. Caleb sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's challenging to stay calm when the people I care about are in danger." Nicole leaned against the railing beside him. "You're not the only one who cares," she said softly. "But we need to be strategic. Recklessness won't help her, or the twins." Caleb glanced at her, his expression softening. "You're right," he admitted. I can't lose her again." Nicole's gaze held his, a flicker of understanding passing between them. "You won't," she said, her voice steady, "but you have to trust the rest of us to help." In the study, Caleb laid out his next move to Adam and Nicole. "We're running out of time," he said. "They're getting bolder, and we need answers now. I'm going back into the hospital." Adam frowned. It's too risky. They'll be expecting something after today. Caleb's jaw tightened. That's exactly why we need to act. The longer we wait, the more dangerous it gets. Nicole's expression was unreadable as she spoke. If we're doing this, we need a solid plan. No improvising. Caleb nodded. I'll take care of it. As the rain continued to fall outside, the resolve in the room solidified. They had drawn the battle lines, and there was no turning back. The hospital loomed under the overcast sky, its sterile white facade belying the darkness Caleb knew lurked within. Dressed in a crisp lab coat and armed with forged credentials, he stepped through the sliding glass doors. His posture was confident, his demeanor calm, but beneath the surface, his senses were on high alert. He had devised a new plan. Nicole's voice buzzed faintly in his ear through a concealed earpiece. You're in. Keep it smooth. They're already suspicious after your last visit. Noted, Caleb murmured, his eyes scanning the lobby. A nurse behind the reception desk gave him a brief glance before returning to her computer. He approached her with practiced ease. I'm Dr. Carlson, he said, flashing a fake ID badge. Here for the facility assessment. The nurse nodded, motioning toward a side door. Second floor, administrative wing. Someone will meet you there. Caleb thanked her and moved briskly toward the elevators, his heart pounding. Nicole's voice cut through the silence again. There are security cameras in the hallways. Keep your head down, and don't linger. Caleb found himself in a stark corridor in the administrative wing, lined with frosted glass doors. The hum of fluorescent lights filled the air. He arrived at the patient records door and quickly surveyed his surroundings. There was no one in sight. With a practiced motion, he used a small tool to bypass the lock and slipped inside. The room was cramped, filled with filing cabinets and a single computer terminal. Caleb worked quickly, accessing the system using credentials Nicole had procured. Files began to load, a flood of data revealing the scale of the operation. Falsified birth records, untraceable adoptions, and cryptic financial transactions. Nicole, he whispered, his voice taut, it's worse than we thought. They're trafficking infants, selling them to the highest bidder. Nicole's response was immediate. Get what you can, and get out. They won't take kindly to you snooping around. Caleb transferred the files onto a flash drive and tucked it into his pocket. Just as he turned to leave, the door handle rattled. His pulse spiked as he darted behind a row of cabinets. The door creaked open, and a man in a security uniform stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room. Caleb held his breath, his body tensed. The guard moved closer, his flashlight sweeping over the cabinets. Nicole's voice in Caleb's ear was urgent. Get out now. Caleb waited until the guard turned toward the computer, then slipped out of the room silently. He moved quickly down the hall, but the guard's voice suddenly rang out behind him. Hey! Stop! Adrenaline surged as Caleb broke into a run, heading for the stairwell. The guard's footsteps pounded behind him, and an alarm blared through the hospital, the shrill sound cutting through the air. With his heart pounding, Caleb burst through the stairwell door and descended 2 flights of stairs. He exited onto the ground floor and blended into a group of visitors near the entrance. Keeping his head low, he slipped out the door and into the parking lot. I'm clear, he said into the earpiece, his breath ragged. Meet me at the drop point. Back at the mansion, Amanda's fury swiftly overshadowed her relief at seeing Caleb alive. She stormed into the living room, where he stood, still catching his breath. She cried out, her voice trembling. What were you thinking? I was thinking about protecting you, Caleb shot back, his frustration matching hers. This isn't just about you anymore, Amanda. It's about Lucas and Logan. I had to do something. Amanda's eyes filled with tears, her voice dropping. I can't lose you too, Caleb. I just found you. Caleb's expression softened, and he stepped closer. I'm not going anywhere, Amanda, but I can't sit back and do nothing while they're out there, threatening our family. Amanda stared at him for a moment before nodding, the fight draining from her shoulders. Just promise me you'll be careful. I promise, Caleb said, his voice steady. Later that night, Amanda sat on the couch, watching Lucas and Logan sleep in their bassinet. Adam joined her, lowering himself onto the cushion beside her. For a while, neither of them spoke, the silence filled only by the soft sounds of the baby's breathing. Finally, Amanda spoke, her voice barely audible over a whisper. They just trust that I'll keep them safe. You will, Adam said, his tone firm but gentle. You already are. Amanda turned to him, her eyes glistening. I'm scared, Adam. Every time I think about what could have happened today, I feel like I'm failing them. You're not failing, Adam said, his gaze steady. You're doing everything you can, and you're not alone in this. We're here for you. For them. Something in his voice, his unshakable calm, eased the tightness in Amanda's chest. She nodded, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Thank you. Adam didn't reply, but the look in his eyes spoke volumes. As the house settled into an uneasy quiet, Caleb retreated to his room and opened the files he had retrieved. His stomach churned as he read through the names of influential people in Seattle tied to the trafficking operation. Politicians, business leaders, even law enforcement. He clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. The corruption ran deeper than he had imagined, and the enemy was more powerful than he had feared. He shut the laptop, his resolve hardening. They weren't just fighting a shadowy network, they were fighting the city itself. The storm outside mirrored the tension brewing within Adam's mansion. Rain battered the windows, the wind howling through the surrounding trees. Caleb stood in the study, pacing as he relayed his findings to Adam, Nicole, and Amanda. They're more entrenched than we thought, Caleb said, his voice tight. The names on this list include politicians, corporate leaders, and even law enforcement. They have eyes everywhere. Nicole frowned, her arms crossed. It's no wonder they're so bold. With that kind of backing, they think they're untouchable. Amanda sat on the couch, cradling Logan, her face pale. What do we do now? How do we stop something so massive? Adam leaned against the desk, his expression grim. We stay vigilant. We gather more evidence and bring it to the right people. But first, we protect this house and everyone in it. A sudden noise interrupted the plan, a low hum that grew louder, like an engine approaching. Caleb stiffened, his hand instinctively moving to his sidearm. That's not good. Nicole darted to the window, peering through the curtains, her expression hardened. Vehicles. There are 3 such vehicles. They've found us. The mansion erupted into chaos as Adam's security team sprang into action. The attackers, armed and methodical, surrounded the property, their intentions unmistakable. Caleb took command, directing the team, while Adam secured Amanda and the twins in a safe room. Amanda, however, refused to stay hidden. I'm not leaving them, she insisted, clutching Lucas and Logan tightly. Amanda, please, Adam urged, his voice strained. We need you safe. Her eyes blazed with determination. They are my children, Adam. I'm not running while they're in danger. Adam hesitated, his jaw tightening. He nodded, understanding her resolve. Then we fight. The first breach came through the back door. Caleb and the security team intercepted the intruders, the sharp crack of gunfire echoing through the halls. Nicole, armed with a pistol she handled with surprising proficiency, covered Caleb's flank. Remind me to ask where you learned that, Caleb muttered, as they ducked behind a kitchen island. Nicole smirked, her tone dry despite the situation. "You're not the only one with a past, Caleb." The chaos tested Amanda's courage. One of the attackers, slipping past the security team, made it to the living room where she was hiding with the twins. He towered over her, his presence menacing. "Don't make this harder than it has to be," he said, stepping closer. Amanda's heart raced, but fear gave way to fury. She grabbed a nearby lamp, her grip steady. "Stay away from my children," she said, her voice trembling but firm. When he lunged, Amanda swung the lamp with all her strength, the base connecting with his head. He staggered, giving her enough time to grab the twins and retreat to a more secure room. Meanwhile, Adam was relentless in defending the house. He moved with precision, his calm demeanor belying the fire burning within. When another attacker attempted to breach the safe room where Amanda had taken refuge, Adam intercepted him, his blows swift and decisive. "You picked the wrong house," Adam growled, his fist connecting with the intruder's jaw. He secured the door behind him, his eyes meeting Amanda's. "Are you all right?" Amanda nodded, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "We're fine." Adam placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll get through this. I promise." The attackers began to retreat as sirens wailed in the distance. The police, alerted by one of Adam's guards, arrived just as the remaining intruders attempted to flee. Officers swarmed the property, arresting the attackers and securing the area. In the aftermath, Nicole approached one of the officers, handing over the flash drive Caleb had retrieved from the hospital. "This has everything you need to take them down," she said, her tone unyielding. "Make sure it gets into the right hands." The officer nodded, his expression serious. "We'll handle it." As the house quieted, Amanda sat on the couch, holding both twins in her arms. Caleb entered, his shirt streaked with dirt and sweat. He crouched in front of her, his eyes searching hers. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Amanda nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "I was so scared, Caleb, but I couldn't let them take my boys." "You didn't," Caleb said firmly. "You were incredible." She managed a weak smile, her hand reaching out to grip his. "We all were." Later, as the police processed the scene, Nicole and Caleb stood on the porch, watching the rain subside. She glanced at him, her expression thoughtful. "You're a decent man, Caleb," she said quietly. "Even if you're a little reckless." He chuckled, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "And you're not half awful yourself, Nicole, for a lawyer." Nicole smirked, nudging him with her elbow. "I'll take that as a compliment." Inside, Adam found Amanda sitting in the nursery. Watch the twins sleep. He stepped in, his presence a quiet comfort. "They're safe now," he said, his voice low. Amanda turned to him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Because of you. Because of all of you." Adam crouched beside her, his hand brushing hers lightly. "You're stronger than you think, Amanda. You didn't need us. You just needed to believe in yourself." For the first time in days, Amanda felt the weight on her chest lighten. She nodded, leaning her head against Adam's shoulder as the twins' soft breathing filled the room. The weeks that followed the attack brought both resolution and reflection. The flash drive Caleb had retrieved from the hospital became the cornerstone of a massive investigation. The dismantling of the trafficking ring spread across Seattle, shattering the foundations of the powerful individuals involved. Authorities made arrests, and the public's outcry was overwhelming. In Adam's study, Caleb and Nicole sat across from each other, reviewing the latest updates from law enforcement. Caleb leaned back in his chair, a rare moment of relaxation softening his features. "They got them," Nicole said, scrolling through her laptop. The evidence was airtight. This operation is over. Caleb exhaled deeply, the tension in his chest finally easing. It's not just about taking them down. It's about making sure nothing like this happens again. Nicole tilted her head, her sharp gaze softening. You care a lot more than you let on. He smirked, but his voice was sincere. So do you. The room fell into a comfortable silence, the kind that didn't demand words. Caleb glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. You know, you're pretty incredible under pressure. Nicole raised an eyebrow, her lips curving into a smirk. That almost sounded like a compliment. It was, Caleb admitted, his voice quiet, but firm. You're not just a lawyer, Nicole. You're a fighter. She gazed at him, an unspoken exchange taking place between them. So are you, Caleb. Meanwhile, Amanda sat in the nursery, watching Lucas and Logan nap. Adam appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame. He had a way of grounding her, his quiet strength a steady presence in the whirlwind her life had become. Do you have a moment? Adam asked, stepping into the room. Amanda nodded, motioning for him to sit. He settled into the chair beside her, his gaze resting on the twins. I've been thinking, he began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant, about everything. She waited, sensing the weight of his words. You and the boys, Adam continued, his tone softening. You've given my life something I didn't even know it was missing. I've spent so long building walls, focusing on work, that I forgot what it feels like to care. Amanda's breath caught as she looked at him, her heart pounding. Adam. I care about you, Amanda, he said, his eyes meeting hers. More than I thought I could. I don't just want to protect you. I want to be a part of your life. A part of their lives. Tears welled in Amanda's eyes, her voice trembling. You mean that? Every word, Adam said, his voice steady. But only if you'll have me. Amanda reached out, her hand finding his. Adam, you've already been a part of our lives. You've been our anchor when we had nothing to hold on to. I can't imagine doing this without you. Their hands tightened around each other's, the connection between them unspoken, but undeniable. For the first time, Amanda allowed herself to imagine a future, a family. Later that evening, Amanda found Caleb sitting on the back porch, a mug of coffee in his hands. She joined him, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders as the cool night air settled over them. You're quiet, she said, breaking the silence. Caleb glanced at her, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Just thinking. About? She pressed. He took a sip of his coffee before answering. I want to talk about how much I've missed. How much I still want to make up for. Amanda reached over, placing her hand on his arm. You don't have to make up for anything, Caleb. You're here now. That's what matters. He looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of regret and determination. I want to be the brother you deserve, Amanda. I don't want to lose you again. You won't, she said firmly. We're in this together now, as siblings, as family. Caleb nodded, his smile growing. Family. The next morning, sunlight poured through the windows of Adam's mansion, casting a warm glow over the once shadowed rooms. Amanda stood in the kitchen, holding Logan, while Lucas babbled in his high chair. Adam entered, placing a kiss on her temple as he grabbed a mug of coffee. Caleb and Nicole soon joined them, their banter light and easy. For the first time in years, Amanda felt a sense of peace. The past was still there, its scars lingering, but the weight of it no longer defined her. She had found her family, not just in Caleb, but in Adam, Nicole, and the life they were building together. A breeze rustled leaves and birds sang in the garden. It wasn't just a new day, it was a new beginning. And, for Amanda, it was the first step toward a future she could finally believe in. The sun filtered gently through the large bay windows of a new home, nestled on the outskirts of a quiet, tree-lined town. Amanda stood on the wraparound porch, holding a mug of tea and watching Lucas and Logan play on a blanket spread over the lush green lawn. The sound of their laughter mingled with the chirping of birds and the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. Adam stepped out from the house, carrying a tray with 2 cups of coffee. He placed one on the porch railing beside Amanda before joining her. "Peaceful, isn't it?" he said, his voice low and warm. Amanda smiled, her gaze lingering on the twins. "More than I ever thought possible." Adam nodded, his hand brushing hers as he leaned against the railing. "It's a fresh start, Amanda, for all of us." The move to this serene suburban retreat had been Adam's idea, spurred by a desire to offer Amanda and the twins a life far removed from the shadows of their past. The house was modest by his standards, but perfect for a family. A cozy kitchen, a nursery bathed in sunlight, and a backyard with enough space for Lucas and Logan to explore as they grew. Caleb and Nicole had helped them settle in, their frequent visits turning the house into a bustling hub of activity. Caleb often joked about Adam's newfound domestic side, while Nicole found ways to subtly keep the family connected to the outside world through her legal expertise and charm. Inside, Caleb and Nicole were unpacking boxes in the living room. Caleb pulled out a picture frame and stared at the photo, one of him, Amanda, and their parents, taken long before life had splintered their family apart. Nicole glanced over, her expression softening. "You okay?" Caleb nodded, though his voice was quieter than usual. "Yeah, just thinking about how far we've come." She stepped closer, her tone gentle but teasing. "You've come a long way, Caleb. From brooding secret agent to family man." He chuckled, setting the frame on a shelf. "And you? From cutthroat lawyer to, well, slightly less cutthroat lawyer." Nicole smirked, nudging him playfully. "I prefer multifaceted." Their laughter faded into a comfortable silence, their shared glances lingering a little longer each time. The bond between them, forged in chaos, had begun to evolve into something deeper. But for now, they were content to let it grow slowly, savoring each moment. Later in the day, Adam joined Amanda in the nursery. She was organizing the twins' growing collection of toys, while Logan babbled happily in his crib. Adam leaned against the doorframe, watching her with a faint smile. "You've made this place feel like home," he said. Amanda turned, her expression softening. "It already feels like home. Because of you." Adam crossed the room, his gaze steady. "Amanda, I meant what I said before. You and the boys, you're my family now. I want to be here for you, in every way." She reached for his hand, her voice trembling with emotion. "You already are, Adam. I never thought I'd find this again. This feeling of belonging. But with you, it feels real." Their connection deepened as Adam pulled her into a quiet embrace. They stayed like that for a moment, the chaos of their past slipping further away with each passing breath. As the day waned, the family gathered on the porch. Nicole received a glass of iced tea from Caleb as they joined Adam and Amanda on the wooden swing. Lucas toddled across the lawn, laughing as Logan clapped his hands in delight. Amanda watched the twins, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I didn't think this was possible," she said softly, almost to herself. Adam turned to her, his expression filled with quiet certainty. "You made it possible, Amanda. You never gave up." Caleb chimed in from his seat on the steps. "And we're here because of you, sis. All of us." Nicole nodded, raising her glass. "To new beginnings." The sun dipped lower on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink. Amanda looked around at the faces surrounding her, the family she had fought so hard to protect, and the life they had built together. For the first time in years, she felt truly at peace. As Lucas and Logan giggled in the fading light, Amanda leaned her head against Adam's shoulder. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was living. With her family by her side, she knew that the future held great promise. This was home. This was hope. This was everything. If this film touches your heart, leave your mark with a like. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to explore more meaningful stories with us. Share your feelings with us and tell us your own stories. Every word you share is a building block that helps create our strong and enduring community. Together, we'll create a warm space where everyone can share and connect. Finally, don't miss the incredible stories coming your way soon. We're always here to bring you the best selections, full of deep values, yet entertaining. See you there.